This HOA Karen slammed into my trash can 57 different times with her $60,000 Escalade. So I swapped it out for a concrete one and watched her total her own SUV instead. What began as her early morning property rampage eventually turned into criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one painfully expensive reminder that bullying the wrong neighbor can backfire hard. Picture the moment. The sharp snap of plastic bursting apart cuts through the quiet dawn, followed by the metallic grind of her bumper scraping asphalt as that pearl-white Escalade rockets away again, leaving my garbage sprayed across the driveway like party confetti. But the funny thing about bullies? They never imagine the person they're messing with will respond with literal concrete evidence. By the time everything unraveled, this self-proclaimed compliance officer had wrecked her own luxury vehicle, uncovered a $47,000 embezzlement scheme in the process, and discovered that some neighbors aren't scared of fake authority and clipboards. Honestly, what would you do if someone next door treated your property like a demolition derby every single morning? Drop a comment and shout out your city. I want to see whether this brand of HOA insanity happens everywhere or just here. Let me rewind and explain how we even got here. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, and I've spent the last 22 years working as an electrician. Recently divorced, trying to secure joint custody of my two teenagers, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those copy-paste HOA suburbs in Ohio, where the lawn height must be exactly 2.5 inches and mailboxes come in only 3 approved colors. I bought the corner lot house 3 years ago, right after signing the divorce papers. I thought it would be a fresh start. Kids would get their own rooms, good schools, safe streets. What I didn't expect was crossing paths with Brenda Whitmore, a 52-year-old widow who anointed herself the neighborhood's compliance officer, a role that doesn't actually exist in the HOA handbook, by the way. Brenda drives a pearl-white Escalade bigger than some studio apartments. She moved in about 3 years back after her husband passed, no children, retired from managing a downtown bank. She has every HOA rule memorized and treats our monthly dues like her personal spending account. She's close friends with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which practically makes her untouchable. Here's where geography comes in. My corner lot means trash pickup requires me to place my bin near the street every Tuesday morning. The city ordinance says within 3 feet of the curb, exactly where Brenda takes her daily 6:15 a.m. power walk. The first incident happened on a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I was getting the kids ready, coffee brewing, hearing the distant diesel growl of the garbage truck still 20 minutes out. Then, crack, a blast like a gunshot. I rushed outside to find my trash can annihilated, garbage sprayed across my driveway like someone set off a confetti bomb packed with banana peels and coffee grounds. And there's Brenda, slowly backing up her Escalade, rolling her window down with this staged look of concern. "Oh my," she says, not a hint of sincerity. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing. I'd bought it the week before for $23 at Home Depot. Still, I stayed calm, convinced it was an honest mistake. I spent 20 minutes gathering soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters as diesel fumes lingered in the air. Emma and Tyler watched from the window, mortified that their dad was crawling around the driveway in pajamas. That first week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine, 6:15 sharp. The roar of her oversized engine, the sickening crunch of plastic against steel, then silence as she sped off. By Friday, I was suspicious. By the next Tuesday, I knew it was intentional. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed it. "She takes long way on purpose," she said gently. "Plenty room other side, but she drive close to your can every time." I tried confronting Brenda calmly, caught her during one of her afternoon patrols. "Hey, about the trash can situation." She cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, you're still adjusting to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers obstructing traffic flow. Perhaps consider placement timing adjustments?" Placement timing adjustments? As if there's some magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't require the can to be curbside. That night, I dove into researching property rights, HOA rules, municipal ordinances. Turns out trash cans placed in public right-of-way are still considered personal property. Even better, our HOA has 0 regulations on timing or material, only that cans can't be visible except on pickup day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 cans, $92 gone. The kids were anxious from the daily chaos, and my custody evaluator was noting neighborhood instability concerns. Something had to give. That's when the smirk started. Brenda began locking eyes with me me during her morning trash can takedowns, wearing that satisfied grin that told me she absolutely knew what she was doing. Game on. 2 weeks into October, Brenda shifted from wrecking my property to full-blown psychological warfare. I came home from a job site to find a certified letter waiting for me, the kind that makes your stomach sink before you even tear it open. The thick, official paper felt expensive between my fingers, and the fresh ink smell told me she hadn't recycled some old template. Improper trash receptacle placement creating a traffic hazard, it announced in dense legal jargon polished enough to impress a paralegal. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. I had 72 hours to correct the violation or face $50 fines per day. She'd clearly shoved this through while the board was still trying to recover from the documentation I'd presented at the last meeting. This is where years of troubleshooting electrical codes came in handy. When something doesn't add up, you trace it until it does. That evening, I dove into municipal law like I was chasing down a short circuit. After 3 hours of cross-checking city codes with county regulations, I struck gold. The city's own rules require trash cans to be placed within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. Even better, HOA authority stops at the property line. They literally have no power over public right-of-way. I remembered a similar case I'd read about online. Some homeowner in California won using this exact argument. I spent the weekend assembling my defense like I was prepping for my contractor's licensing exam again. Mounted the Ring doorbell camera perfectly to catch the daily routine. $47 well spent. Hired a professional surveyor to confirm my placement met every city requirement. Even convinced Mrs. Olivia to write a statement, though her hands trembled as she signed. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda had taken her show to social media. She bombarded the Nextdoor app with dramatic claims about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing responsible drivers into oncoming lanes. Her 3 devoted supporters cheered her on, while everyone else agreed she'd finally lost touch with reality. Then came the twist that proved just how desperate she'd become. A buddy of mine at City Hall, Dave, who works in the permit office and has done electrical jobs with me, called Tuesday morning with something interesting. The city had received 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner. Each claimed a different witness, yet all were clearly written by the same person, and all were submitted within 15 minutes at 2:47 a.m. Professional detective work. This was not Marcus, Dave joked. Either your neighborhood has a wave of insomniacs with identical writing styles, or someone is working overtime to build a case against you. By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder thick enough to knock someone out cold. The community center reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and years of soul-crushing municipal meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, record attendance, which had President Thornfield tugging at his tie every half minute. Brenda sat at the board table in a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business," but I noticed the faint tremble in her hand when she reached for her water. She knew what was coming. When they called for old business, I rose with my folder. I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as the room fell silent. I read the city ordinance aloud, line by line, then presented the survey proving I was in perfect compliance. The finishing touch was mentioning my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney who'd handled dozens of HOA disputes. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly concerning, she said, watching the color drain from Brenda's face. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before managing, "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this until additional consideration." Translation, they had nothing, and everyone in the room knew it. But Brenda wasn't finished. As we filed out, she cornered me beneath the buzzing security lights in the parking lot. That's when she finally revealed who she truly was. "You think you're so smart," she spat, loud enough for the dozen neighbors still talking nearby to hear every syllable. "People like you come into good neighborhoods and think the rules don't apply. Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street actually gasped. Jim Torres, the maintenance guy, suddenly pretended his keys were the most fascinating objects on earth. The racial undertones hung in the humid October air like smoke from a house fire, undeniable to everyone present. My phone, sitting casually in my shirt pocket, recorded every hateful word. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us. Tyler wanted to know whether we'd have to move again. I tucked them in and promised everything would be okay. But privately, I was tallying the cost of this war. 3 replaced trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney fees climbing. Yet something had shifted. Homeowners had started whispering about board overreach and asking awkward questions about selective enforcement. Brenda's meltdown had exposed what many suspected. This wasn't about traffic safety or maintaining standards. It was about power, about putting people she didn't like in their place. The next morning proved the shift. Instead of her usual aggressive smash and run, Brenda crawled past my trash can slowly, studying it like a general examining a battlefield before the next attack. The pattern was changing, which meant bigger trouble was on the horizon. November hit Pinewood Gardens like a frozen punch to the jaw, and Brenda came swinging even harder. While I was patting myself on the back for winning round 1, she was busy turning every obscure HOA bylaw into a weapon. Apparently, she had spent weeks dissecting our community guidelines like a prosecutor assembling a RICO indictment. The attacks came one after another. First, a violation for my grass height, supposedly 2.75 inches, exceeding the 2.5-inch maximum by a criminal quarter-inch. Then she went after my mailbox, claiming the once heritage blue paint had faded into an outlaw shade she called unauthorized weathered navy. Finally, she cited 3 tiny tears in my window screens, so microscopic you'd need forensic equipment to notice them. Each violation carried a $50 fine with a 10-day deadline. The best part? I spent an entire Saturday walking the neighborhood with a tape measure and camera documenting identical issues at 14 other properties. Gerald Thornfield's grass was pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox had faded to almost the exact same hue as mine. Half of Maple Street had screen damage from last summer's hailstorm, yet somehow only my violations were official offenses. While Brenda was busy playing bylaw prosecutor, I was sipping coffee with Dale Kowalski at the Home Depot contractor desk. Dale has been pouring concrete for 23 years, and when I mentioned my trash can saga, his weathered face split into a knowing grin. "You know," he said, stirring his coffee with a paint stick, "nothing in the city code dictates what material your trash container has to be. Plastic, metal, concrete, if it holds garbage and meets size requirements, it's fair game." That single comment planted the seed of what would become Brenda's worst nightmare. 60 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar for reinforcement, and a clever modification to a standard plastic shell. Total cost? $47, far cheaper than the $350 I was staring down in fines and replacement cans. But before building my secret weapon, I had to address her harassment campaign. Tuesday night, I compiled a massive set of photos documenting every comparable violation in the neighborhood. Wednesday morning, I submitted a formal complaint to the HOA board for selective and discriminatory enforcement. Here's something 2 decades in permitting taught me. Bureaucrats hate when you use their own systems against them. My complaint forced the board to either enforce rules equally across the entire neighborhood or admit they were singling me out. Neither outcome worked in Brenda's favor. The real turning point came when I analyzed the pattern of her previous citations. Over the past year, she had issued 67 notices. 49 went to single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 targeted married couples or long-term homeowners. The trend was so blatant it practically lit up like a lawsuit neon sign. I remembered that violations under the Fair Housing Act and discrimination in HOA enforcement could trigger federal scrutiny. The image of Brenda trying to justify her numbers to a civil rights attorney made me laugh for the first time in weeks. By Friday afternoon, I began my weekend concrete project. Emma and Tyler thought it was hilarious, helping me mix cement in the garage while classic rock buzzed from my paint-splattered radio. The smell of curing concrete brought me back to helping my dad pour our basement floor decades ago, that familiar alkaline scent that signals something permanent being built. The engineering was simple but effective. The bottom stayed hollow for weight distribution, drainage holes maintained functionality, and the exterior looked exactly like every other trash can on the block. From the outside, it appeared completely ordinary. Inside, 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete waited to teach Brenda a physics lesson involving immovable objects. Monday morning, I placed my upgraded trash can in its usual spot. At 6:15 sharp, the rumble of Brenda's oversized engine echoed down the street. But this time, her approach felt different, more slower, more cautious. She clearly noticed the can looked the same, but something made her wary. The first impact came at roughly 15 miles per hour, her classic ramming speed. The sound this time wasn't the brittle crunch of plastic. It was a deep, solid thunk, followed by metal screaming against concrete. Her Escalade's running board crumpled like cheap aluminum, while my trash can sat there looking slightly annoyed. I watched from my kitchen window, coffee warming my hands, as Brenda remained frozen in her SUV for a full 30 seconds. Trying to process what just happened, she repositioned the vehicle and rammed it again from another angle. Same result: more damage to her luxury SUV, zero damage to my concrete tank. And the best part? The entire setup was perfectly legal. No city codes violated, no HOA rules breached. Just a homeowner upgrading her garbage container with sturdier materials. If she wanted to keep smashing into it, that was her decision and her insurance claim. Over the next week, Brenda delivered increasingly desperate attempts to break my invention. Each collision added fresh dents and scratches to her pearl white Escalade, while my can remained smugly unbothered. The irony was delicious. Her own aggression was destroying the very vehicle she used as a weapon. By Friday, her SUV carried nearly $800 worth of damage. Mine, a few scuffs that made it look more authentic. Neighbors were talking now, and for the first time, Brenda wasn't the one controlling the story. By mid-November, Brenda had evolved from the neighborhood's resident busybody into a full-scale amateur detective. Her obsession with my trash can had gotten so intense that I was convinced she was sketching conspiracy diagrams about it in her sleep. I'd spot her pearl white Escalade, now boasting an ever-growing collection of dents and scrapes, creeping past my house at strange hours like some kind of suburban surveillance van. The first real clue that she'd entered investigator mode came on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Olivia called, her voice shaky and hushed. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I saw her from my bedroom window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I couldn't help laughing at the mental picture. Brenda, probably still wearing her navy blazer and practical shoes, sneaking around my property at midnight with a bathroom scale, trying to solve the mystery of the unbreakable trash container. The woman desperately needed a hobby that didn't involve trespassing. Her investigative crusade only escalated from there. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, told me she cornered him at the hardware store, grilling him about concrete purchases and asking which homeowners had bought unusual materials lately. She'd even taken to stalking my social media accounts, hunting for clues in my posts about weekend home projects. But the moment that truly exposed her desperation came when she tried weaponizing city bureaucracy again. Thursday afternoon, a building inspector knocked on my door, a tired guy named Pete who clearly would rather be doing anything else. "Got a complaint from a resident," he said, flipping through his clipboard like it pained him. "Something about unauthorized concrete structures on your property." I led him to the trash can. He gave it a quick 30-second inspection before shaking his head. "It's a garbage container, not a load-bearing wall. No permits needed, no violations here. Honestly, I've seen people build whole sheds without attracting this much attention." But Brenda wasn't finished with the official harassment. The following week, a notice arrived from the HOA demanding immediate access to my property for a compliance inspection. The letter was obviously crafted by Brenda and lazily rubber-stamped by President Thornfield. According to them, they needed to evaluate my exterior modifications for safety issues. This is where all my research into property rights finally paid off. I'd spent hours studying Fourth Amendment protections and HOA authority limits after her first bogus violation. The landmark case was Nassaret versus Lakeside Village, which established that HOAs cannot conduct fishing expeditions on private property without a valid cause or urgent circumstances. My response was polite but ironclad. No access to private property without a court order or a legitimate emergency. If they wanted to examine my perfectly legal trash receptacle, they could view it from the public sidewalk like every other human being. You could practically smell Brenda's frustration from halfway down the street, almost as satisfying as the scent of curing concrete. Meanwhile, her Escalade had turned into a rolling billboard advertising the durability of steel-reinforced trash cans. Every morning brought a new attempt to damage my creation, and every attempt added fresh wounds to her luxury SUV. The running board now sagged like a broken wing. Her front bumper sported spiderweb fractures, and one headlight assembly had developed a noticeable rattle. People were starting to pay attention. During my Saturday morning coffee run, I overheard at least 3 conversations about that crazy woman who keeps hitting the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had started timing Brenda's morning collisions. The teens on Elm Street had even created a betting pool for the daily outcome. Emma found the chaos both hilarious and humiliating. "Dad, kids at school keep asking if we're the family with the concrete trash can lady," she groaned over dinner. I can't decide if I should deny everything or claim we have the coolest revenge story in the district. Tyler, ever entrepreneurial, wondered if we could monetize it. Seriously, Dad, $5 for front row seats? I could pay for college by Christmas. The true breakthrough came when Patricia Lopez, the only sane member of the board, pulled me aside after a community event. Standing near the community center's coffee station, she spoke softly. Marcus, you need to know something. Brenda's been having private meetings with Gerald about expanding enforcement authority. She wants the board to approve property inspections, material restrictions, even background checks for contractors people hire. But her biggest bombshell was financial. She's also been pushing hard for approval of maintenance contracts with some company none of us recognize. Every time we talk budget, she has these incredibly detailed proposals ready, like she's been preparing for months. That night, I shifted into investigator mode myself. If Brenda was this obsessed with regulating neighborhood projects and pushing specific contractors, maybe her motives weren't just about power. Maybe it was about money. Public records are gold mines if you know how to dig. Municipal contracting databases reveal a lot about who gets paid and why. By Sunday night, I had uncovered something that made her trash can vendetta look trivial. Brenda Whitmore wasn't just a control freak with too much spare time. She was running a scam, and my concrete trash fortress had accidentally pulled the thread that could unravel her entire operation. This has to stop. She spent $8,000 on lawyers, surveillance, and vehicle repairs. Our insurance got canceled. The business is facing contract cancellations. I need to know what would it take to make this go away. I almost felt sorry for the guy. Almost. Richard, your wife stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and embezzled from 127 homeowners. This isn't going away with an apology and a check. The twist that revealed just how desperate they'd become came 2 hours before the board meeting. Brenda filed an emergency restraining order petition based on completely fabricated evidence, fake threatening voicemails, doctored photos of aggressive confrontations, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. The petition was so poorly constructed that Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it without even scheduling a hearing. Miss Whitmore, these recordings are clearly edited, these photos are obviously staged, and these witnesses appear to be fictional. Filing false evidence is contempt of court. Consider this your only warning. But Brenda's legal troubles were multiplying faster than her collision attempts. The state insurance commissioner had assigned investigator Maria Santos to build a criminal fraud case. The district attorney's office was reviewing harassment and stalking charges. The IRS had received copies of all financial documentation showing unreported income from the construction contracts. As 6 p.m. approached, the community center parking lot filled up like Black Friday at Best Buy. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street with neighbors walking from 3 blocks away carrying lawn chairs and folding signs. Channel 7's news van pulled up precisely at 5:30, followed by Channel 12 and the Metro Weekly reporter who'd been following our story. Inside the meeting room, you could cut the tension with a concrete saw. 118 residents packed into a space designed for 40, with overflow crowds standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. The smell of nervous perspiration mixed with industrial coffee created an atmosphere thick enough to chew. Brenda arrived fashionably late, flanked by Harold Masterson and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Her usual navy blazer had been replaced with funeral black, and the tremor in her hands was visible from across the room. Gerald Thornfield kept adjusting his tie like a noose was tightening around his neck. The attempted intimidation backfired spectacularly. Masterson's opening statement about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents was interrupted by Mrs. Olivia standing up with her stack of witness statements. "Excuse me," she said in her careful English, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and embezzling money?" The room erupted in applause and nervous laughter. 17 neighbors had prepared to speak during public comment, each armed with documentation of Brenda's harassment, financial irregularities, or selective enforcement patterns. The evidence compilation filled 3 banker's boxes and included everything from collision videos to contract analysis to criminal complaint receipts. But the real bombshell was yet to come. At exactly 6:45, as Brenda was attempting to deflect questions about the Whitmore construction contracts, Officer Derek Martinez walked through the community center doors carrying an official-looking folder. "Sorry to interrupt," he announced to the suddenly silent room, "but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges." The color drained from Brenda's face faster than antifreeze from her damaged Escalade. Harold Masterson immediately began whispering urgent legal advice, while Gerald Thornfield looked like he was having chest pains. Game over. Check and mate. Time for the public execution. The community center had never seen anything like it. 127 residents, literally every homeowner in Pinewood Gardens, packed into a room designed for maybe 40 people, with another 15 media representatives setting up cameras like this was a presidential debate. The air conditioning couldn't keep up with the body heat, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps sensing blood in the water. I'd positioned myself strategically in the third row, flanked by Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, with my concrete trash can wheeled in as Exhibit A and sitting proudly beside the podium. The symbolism wasn't subtle. That 60-pound monument to her stupidity had become the star witness in what was about to unfold. Brenda sat at the board table looking like she'd rather be getting a root canal without anesthesia. Her usual navy blazer had been replaced with funeral black, and every few seconds she'd glance toward the exit like a trapped animal calculating escape routes. Harold Masterson whispered urgent legal advice in her ear, while Gerald Thornfield sweated through his shirt like a man facing his own execution. Officer Martinez's entrance with that warrant folder had changed everything. The room fell silent, except for the mechanical whir of news cameras and the nervous tapping of Brenda's pen against the table, a rapid-fire staccato that sounded like Morse code for "help me." Gerald called for order with a voice that cracked like a teenager's. "We'll now hear public comments regarding recent community concerns." I stood up first, carrying my presentation boards like a prosecutor approaching the jury. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the exit sign transformer. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying easily through the packed space. "This isn't about trash cans. This isn't about HOA bylaws or property rights or community standards. This is about accountability, transparency, and stopping corruption before it destroys our neighborhood." I walked them through the timeline methodically. 57 documented collision attempts, each one recorded in high definition. The GPS tracker illegally placed on my vehicle. The spray paint vandalism captured on security cameras. The fake insurance claims that constituted felony fraud. But the real showstopper was the financial presentation. Using a borrowed projector, I displayed the contract analysis that showed $23,400 funneled from community dues directly into Brenda's family business account. "Every month, you've been paying higher fees to fund Mrs. Whitmore's personal construction company," I announced, watching jaws drop throughout the audience. 7 contracts, 7 undisclosed conflicts of interest, 7 violations of state nonprofit law. The video compilation played next, 12 minutes of Brenda's greatest hits set to a soundtrack of crunching plastic and scraping metal. The gasps and nervous laughter from the crowd provided perfect accompaniment to the footage of her increasingly desperate collision attempts. Then came the mic drop moment I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, turning to face her directly while the cameras rolled, "you've spent $3,400 on lawyers, destroyed your $60,000 vehicle, committed insurance fraud, and stalked my family over a $23 trash can. But the real crime is the $47,000 you've stolen from this community through your family's construction company." The room erupted. Neighbors who'd been grumbling about rising HOA fees suddenly understood where their money had been going. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, shouting in rapid Spanish that probably wasn't complimentary. The teenagers from Elm Street actually started clapping like they were at a concert. Brenda's response was everything I'd hoped for and more. She shot up from her chair like a jack-in-the-box, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking under the pressure. "This is harassment," she screamed, her voice reaching frequencies that probably bothered dogs 3 blocks away. "These people don't understand property values or community standards. They come into decent neighborhoods and think rules don't apply to them." The racial undertones hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Channel 7's camera captured every word, every gesture, every moment of her complete psychological breakdown. Mrs. Olivia actually gasped audibly when Brenda pointed directly at her and shouted something about certain elements ruining the community. Harold Masterson tried desperately to control his client, but Brenda was beyond legal advice. She grabbed my evidence boards, attempting to tear them apart before Jim Torres and 2 other neighbors gently restrained her. The woman was having a complete meltdown on live television, while Officer Martinez calmly took notes for his incident report. "I built this community," she shrieked, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears. "I protected property values. I kept standards high. And this is how you treat someone who sacrificed everything for neighborhood integrity?" Gerald Thornfield called for recess, but nobody was leaving. This was better than reality TV, more dramatic than a soap opera, and more satisfying than watching your worst enemy step on a rake. Patricia Lopez stood up amid the chaos and made the motion that everyone was waiting for. "I move for the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore pending criminal investigation and financial audit." The vote was unanimous, 4-0, with Brenda abstaining while handcuffed to Officer Martinez's chair. Justice served, concrete cold, with a side of public humiliation. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Within 48 hours of the board meeting meltdown, Brenda's world collapsed faster than her Escalade suspension system under repeated concrete impacts. Tuesday morning brought her formal resignation, a terse 2 lines of text claiming hostile work environment and personal attacks. By Thursday, the district attorney had filed insurance fraud charges, carrying up to 6 months jail time and $5,000 in fines. Her insurance license was revoked Friday afternoon, followed by the suspension of Whitmore Construction's contractor certification. The financial reckoning was swift and merciless. Our emergency HOA audit conducted by Patterson and Associates CPAs recovered $47,000 in overcharges and questionable contracts. Every homeowner received a $370 refund check by Christmas, the sweetest holiday gift Pinewood Gardens had ever seen. Richard Whitmore called me one final time, his voice hollow with defeat. "The civil settlement check is in the mail," he said quietly. $12,500, as agreed. "Brenda wanted me to tell you she's moving to Florida to live with her sister." I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the GPS tracker, the fake insurance claims, and the months of harassment my family had endured. Some lessons come expensive, and this one cost them everything. The governance transformation was remarkable. Patricia Lopez won the special election for board president by unanimous vote, running on a platform of transparency and community engagement. The new board implemented conflict of interest disclosure requirements, monthly financial reports, and public contractor bidding processes that would make municipal governments jealous. Our first community project under the reformed leadership was the playground renovation, funded entirely by recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler help design the new equipment alongside neighbors who'd once whispered about our disruptive family felt like emotional vindication wrapped in practical progress. The legal precedent spread beyond our neighborhood. Holloway versus Pinewood Gardens, HOA, was cited in 12 subsequent property rights cases across Ohio. The state legislature passed the HOA Accountability Act, requiring financial disclosure and audit procedures that insurance investigators called the gold standard for municipal oversight. Channel 7's investigative series won a regional Emmy for exposing suburban corruption, and reporter Sarah Kim still calls me occasionally for expert commentary on HOA reform legislation. The original collision videos have been viewed over 200,000 times on YouTube, inspiring similar resistance movements in communities from Toledo to Cincinnati. My concrete trash can became a neighborhood legend. We moved it to the community center lobby as a permanent display, complete with a bronze plaque reading, "Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners get the full story during orientation meetings, and visiting contractors often ask to see the famous indestructible can that brought down a corrupt board. But the real victory was community healing. The Concrete Can Days festival we established draws families from 3 surrounding developments every September, featuring bounce houses, barbecue competitions, and educational workshops on homeowner rights. Last year's attendance topped 800 people, turning our trauma into triumph and our resistance into celebration. The scholarship fund I established with the settlement money has helped 4 students attend college so far. The Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship prioritizes applicants who demonstrate creative problem solving in the face of institutional opposition, essentially rewarding future troublemakers who refuse to accept injustice quietly. Emma and Tyler learned lessons about principled resistance that no civics class could teach. Emma's college application essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence earned her admission to 3 journalism programs. Tyler started a YouTube channel called Suburban Justice that covers HOA disputes across the Midwest with the enthusiasm of a teenage investigative reporter. The personal healing surprised me most. My custody evaluation improved dramatically after the community rallied around our family. The judge noted that children benefited benefit from seeing parents stand up for principles and protect family interests through legal channels rather than violence or surrender. My electrical contracting business expanded through referrals from neighbors who'd witnessed my documentation skills and strategic thinking. Apparently, methodical problem solving translates well from HOA disputes to complex wiring projects, and my reputation for getting results the right way opened doors throughout the county. Sometimes David does beat Goliath, but only when David comes prepared with evidence, allies, and 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete. Drop a comment and share your HOA nightmare story. Let's build a database of corruption and help each other fight back. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories where the little guy wins through preparation, patience, and perfect timing. Justice tastes sweetest when served with community support and creative problem solving. Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.
Now everything is as calm as before. In the morning, I walk through the gate. The horses raise their heads. The sun shines on the barn door, just like before. But one thing has changed. When Karen's car drives down the road, she no longer looks at my house, not once. She knows this land is no longer part of her power. This gate no longer obeys her rules. This man is no longer afraid. The funny thing is, the HOA that wanted to control me, now they themselves speak carefully, because sometimes being quiet does not mean being weak. Sometimes, once you stand up, everything stops. I didn't get revenge. I just showed my limits, and that was enough. Now tell me, if you like this HOA story, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if any of your friends like HOA story, be sure to share it with them, because sometimes a trash can change an entire system.